Hello, and welcome to another episode from the Engineering Influence podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. My name is Diana O Lare, and I am the Director of Market Intelligence for ACEC National here in Washington, D.C. Today, I have with me Nabeel Mahmood. He is the CEO of Mahmood and a joint CEO of Nomad Futurist, a 501c3, and co-creator of Nomad Futurist podcast. He is a technologist, futurist, and keynote speaker, and his career is driven by one question: what's next, which we're going to get into today. He brings 20 plus years of experience leading large-scale global technology organizations through seasons of explosive growth via M&A activity, global expansion, implementing new business models, and technology innovation. His expertise includes leading organizations through transformation changes, including IT, to the needs of the business, technology, innovation, big data, cloud, ERP, Internet of Things, AI, ML, RPA, mobility, and data centers. He brings a unique blend of experiences spanning the entire breadth of technology from grid to chip. I like that. His experiences in finance, operations, and technology have brought tremendous value to Mahmood's clients since he has walked in their shoes. He was founded as an independent firm focused on information technology and data centers to provide effective cost reduction strategies, project-based ROI analysis, strategic directional planning, and education to help business leaders understand the right size and leverage their technology investments for profitable gain of the business. Nabeel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. Lovely to be here. Gosh, like that, who's that guy? I mean, that was a long-winded intro, but thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I thought you deserved it, so I wanted to give time and credence to that. Now, we asked Nabeel to join us today in preparation for our upcoming live market briefing, which is going to be held on November 13th. And I just wanted to share a little bit about this upcoming programming before we get into the content of the day. This virtual event will be held from 1:30 to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, and will focus on data centers and telecommunications. This has been a huge market of growth for ACEC member firms. Therefore, we've put together a panel of presenters, including David Fanning, Senior Associate for Global Critical Facilities at Gensler, John Pompasello, Senior Vice President, Network Advisory Services for CBRE, and Kevin Imboden, Global Director of Market Research and Competitive Intelligence for EdgeConneX. During this panel, we're going to cover everything from data centers to land acquisitions, hyperscale centers, which we'll even talk about today, the growth and impact of AI and connectivity, including telecom and fiber. Nabeel has a keynote on this day and is unable to join us, but he did so graciously agree to join us on this podcast, which he so graciously accepted. So we're happy to have him here. So let's jump in. Data center market value is expected to reach over $340 billion in 2024 and then go to $438 billion in 2028. It's a pretty big market. So my question for you, Nabeel, is what are the mega trends impacting data centers in the data center market, and why? What do we need to know about what is happening now?
So the data center market's never seen this much for growth. I mean, if you step back in time for 3.5, 4 decades of computing and data, this is just the beginning of time. And COVID and the entire digital transformation message has been the core driver in this data rush era, is what I call it. Where are we headed? Oh my gosh, this is just the beginning of time. So, we've started to see a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, robotics, and that's really the core driver. At the end of the day, looking back, the root of it, it's really people wanting to access data and people wanting to have access to that data at their fingertips and wanting it now, which is really driving this massive, massive demand. Where is the future? Gosh, I mean, I see we've got brain-computer interfaces coming to us in the very near future. Elon's recent update with Neuralink is actually an example of that. Autonomous vehicles, I mean, they are becoming more and more streamlined. I, as a matter of fact, just rode in one last night as I got into Scottsdale, Arizona, and that was a wonderful experience. Banking has totally changed. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I actually did carry cash. So data is the next gold rush, and all of these technology applications are driving that massive change, and hence the reason for more and more data center builds.
So we've got this huge demand for data, and then now the data centers to supply that. So do you know what's being done to quicken the pace of data center development? We heard that the White House launched an AI data center task force, which is going to try to help facilitate permitting, which is really important for our engineers, is to get that access. Is there anything else being done? I know like land acquisition is another concern. There's not anywhere land to build these, and then hyperscale centers. So the data centers are getting even bigger and bigger. So are there anything creative happening out there to allow that growth?
Yeah, so let's look at the AI data center task force to begin with. I mean, it's very promising where I sit. It believe it's the step towards easing regulatory hurdles and accelerating this critical resource challenge that we've got. A major challenge that we've got in the space as it stands today is power. We basically have this narrative that we are running out of power. Again, I've got my own theories and data points that validate otherwise. As it entails to the government, the action is imperative, and it also would actually help collaborate with a lot of subverticals that exist within our space. I am seeing a lot of partnerships between technology companies, energy providers, and local government. Part of the challenge that we have had in the past is permitting. Like you identify a site where you can't really build, and then you've got regulatory and compliance bodies that they come in that end up being in hurdles. So this task force is actually a testament uh, whereby we can potentially bridge some of the gaps that we currently have. As far as the advancements are concerned, we have to think differently, is the way I look at it. So where we're at and what needs to be done. A part of the challenge is that nobody talks about the efficiency ratios within the data center space. And what I mean by that is that as engineers, we've actually always over-designed and under-provisioned these resources. So there's a lot of stranded compute and stranded power that exists in these spaces. So average utilization across the globe is roughly about 43.5%. What does that tell you? That there is enough compute out there that can potentially fill the gaps that we've got in the space as we start streamlining nuclear, hydrogen, and hopefully potentially fusion energies down the road. So we have to change the way also that we build these environments. So there's no reason to actually build like the way we have done in the past with the brick and mortar buildings. Why don't we actually learn from the kids? Kids play with Lego blocks. Let's big modular scalable data centers. Let's bake them in blocks and chunks that we can actually consume. And once we have maxed that capacity or that threshold thereof, maybe let's just say 80 to 90%, let's add more components to it. And let's get closer to the users. So then that addresses the bandwidth and latency issue as well. I have started to see a lot of those enhancements of design build approach. At the end of the day, the most important thing is I don't want to be driven by regulations and compliances. I want to be driven by innovation, and innovation from the perspective of, okay, let it be sustainable and scalable, whereby we can build environments that do not have a negative carbon impact.
So you have touched on so many things there. So I'm going to try to unbox that a little bit. So you talked about AI. So, and in your intro, I saw grid to chip. Do you think the grid is prepared to take on the influx of demand that is going to be required from AI?
Not at the moment. I mean, as it is right now, it's maxed out. And as it is right now, we are running out of the natural resources. So we have to start thinking a bit differently. The renewables, the way they have been positioned, are not really scalable to address the significant growth that we're going to see. So we have to look outside the box. We have tested technologies, and I'm going to pick up on nuclear just for the sake of conversation for a bit over here. Do you know that 10% of the global energy that's currently being produced and utilized is actually nuclear? Nobody talks about that, right? So if it was 1%, I would question myself. If it was 2%, I would say, Nabeel, okay, there's potential hope. But at 10%, we've got enough data that we should be potentially building on it. And we can actually build small modular reactors that are basically like Lego blocks in a 40-foot container form factor that can be deployed in local neighborhoods. Now, why is it safe? Well, you know what? We've got a lot of data. What the two incidents that we keep referring to, and that's why it's bad, we did not have data. And guess what? Those problems were not caused because of the technology set itself. Those problems were caused because of human. Humans make mistakes, machines do not, sadly to say. But we have enough data point, and I mean, if we can actually get down to the level of the grain with accuracy of data that's in the high nines, then we should be able to create a sustainable and scalable model. So
So, go ahead.
go ahead.
More on the sustainability side and the carbon footprint. We know that data centers are really, giving a really heavy footprint on our carbon emissions. I think I saw somewhere that 40% of all carbon emitted in the country annually is from data centers. And that's only going to go up with the size of the data centers increasing and the energy and the data being transferred among them. So my question is, if we look at sustainability, do you think that factors into site selection, for example, access to water, or what could be done creatively to reduce data centers' carbon footprint in the US?
So you hit the nail on the head. So I'm going to back it up just for a bit. I think data centers are getting a bad rep because we have not done a good job with our narrative. The entire global energy consumption to where we're at is roughly about 1.5%. Now, we do have a carbon challenge. If we continue on the path that we are continuing, I'm potentially looking at roughly about 900 billion metric tons in carbon emission by 2050. That's a massive, massive, massive number. And of course, I mean, it's markets like the Americas and primary markets that you're going to see a majority of that contribution from. So one of the other things that we've actually not done a good job is the fact that we continue to buy tax credits. Again, there is a tax incentive and carbon neutrality incentive that we continue to talk about, but we are buying those tax credits or carbon credits from the likes of steel mills and other high carbon verticals. So we have that bad rep. I mean, the numbers that we get to see are probably, in my opinion, not necessarily 100% true. What do we need to do? Well, we need to go to sites that are more friendly around the lines of giving us the ability for renewable resources. I mean, water in itself and the climate really do define and help with neutralizing those carbon emissions. So, in my world, the way I look at it is I do not need that multi-level of redundancy at the physical layer. I can create that redundancy at the application layer. So why do I need to double my physical layer, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So there is no reason for me to have, two different utility companies providing for my infrastructure. There's no reason for me to have multiple generators, whether gas or diesel, in making sure when there's a catastrophe, they're up. There's no reason for me to have multiples of anything. I can run on a single bus, a single line of bus, whereby if my infrastructure goes down, I can replicate data on a real-time basis and transfer the data anywhere else in the world in a matter of under 2 milliseconds. So if I can do that at the application stack, why do I need that at the physical stack, right? So if I've reduced my physical footprint of these resources that are basically energy hogs in a way, then theoretically speaking, I've reduced my carbon emissions by half right off the bat. Not to mention that I've actually created an environment that's going to be able to address my disaster recovery challenges, whereby I could have a site in New York City, and then I could have a site in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then I can go to San Francisco. And if there is a disaster in one of those three sites, the other two will be able to pick up and continue with business without any downtime. I mean, 2 milliseconds is not really a lot of downtime these days.
So you started to hit on a couple of geographic areas, so I want to kind of hone in on that. So Northern Virginia, Dallas, San Francisco, especially Northern Virginia, that's like the number one market I see. They've historically been the top markets for attracting data center development. More and more we hear about Chicago now because of its central location and reliable power supply, which is a bit of a surprise to me, just how dense it is there. Can you expand on this a little more and tell us what regions you're seeing maybe heating up and why?
So if you just kind of look at Americas, Chicago certainly is one of those areas that's picking up a fair amount of momentum, primarily because of, again, regulations and political support. That's driving a lot of that. Go Chicago. Other areas in the market, primarily in America, that we're going to see a significant amount of investments would be in Reno as well. As I sit where I'm at right now, so I'm currently in Scottsdale, Arizona, Phoenix market. I believe within the next 3 to 5 years, the Phoenix, Arizona market is going to surpass the Northern Virginia market.
That's
So
impressive.
that's just the Americas, and internationally speaking, I mean, of course, you've got the likes of Singapore, Frankfurt, and uh, Sydney are the three core markets internationally, and that's really derivative because of strong connectivity, renewable energy, and favorable regulatory environments. I would imagine, after that rush, and that's really the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a significant amount of capital infusion in the African region and South America. I just came from South Africa, and the two of the three hyperscalers have agreed to spending billions and billions of dollars. I also see a significant amount of growth in the Middle East, primarily in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, just because those people have started to realize that the oil rush is over or will be over relatively soon, and they need to be more data friendly, and that's going to be the big moneymaker in the very near future.
I wanted to see if you would just indulge me here. I want to pivot slightly away from the client-centric focus for our members and look at the business of engineering perspective, because that's what we also do here. My coworker is currently running a series on digital transformation. So I wanted to ask you, because of your background, what does that mean to you? And how are, we helping businesses leverage these digital technologies and generate innovations for their businesses?
Well, I mean, digital transformation is actually a very open-ended statement for that matter. As I look at it, it's not just about technology. For me, it's about implementing a cultural change. It's about a strategy to ensure that the companies can scale up and continue to grow. I'll give you an example to oversimplify this. Sears Holding Company, for years on years, were the largest catalog business, right? Guess what? Technology overtook them because they did not keep up with the times. And Amazon is the next Sears Holding Company, really, at the end of the day. I mean, same model. We have taken it from the old catalogs and converted that to a digital experience. So that's digital transformation. To be overly simple, is to keep up with the evolution and leveraging the tool sets to better enhance the user experience, provide a better service, and then of course have more data points to get closer to the user. So simple things like when you go on Amazon, you buy X, and then, oh, by the way, Diana, there's something else that potentially works with this, and based on your previous history, here's a few more recommendations. So we've actually increased that total capital spend now. So it's really enhancing those experiences, and that really applies in any vertical or any business that you might have. So it's the adoption of the technology with a vision to scale your business up, provide enhanced, better user experience, and leverage the data points.
I kind of want to stay on that same vein. I think this might be our last question. I'll check on our time. I was just at a conference last week, and it was business developers and marketers that work for AEC firms, and change management was top of mind for all of these people. I think it's going to be probably one of our next sessions here. And after we had an AI and a CRM focused session, our members wanted to talk more about change management and how they go about implementing new technologies at their firm, like something as big as AI for them. So where do you suggest they start? Do they get it into their strategy? Do they just start with a ChatGPT? What do you think?
Well, it's like change management actually is the major part of digital transformation. I mean, it's we are the most complicated piece of device ever created. So what I always recommend is starting with clear communication, explain the why behind the change and how it aligns with the organization's vision and goals. You have to engage all stakeholders, and you've got to do that very, very early on in the process. And you've got to ensure that they understand the benefit of new technologies and how it's going to address the concerns that they have. It's also important to have a solid training and support system in place to help employees and people that are involved in that transformation, that they understand that and they have, and the transition is much smoother. At the end of the day, the way I would suggest and recommend is to be patient. Change and change management is a process. It's not a one-time event, and it requires ongoing continuous adoption and assessment.
Fascinating. Nabeel, I think we were only just scratching the surface with this conversation, and I hope you will be willing to come back and join us again. I want to say thank you to Nabeel Mahmood for joining us today. Thank you, Nabeel.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Wonderful. Again, join us on November 13th for a live market briefing with the other 3 panelists for more on the growing data center and telecommunications market. This has been another episode of the Engineering Influence podcast. See you next time.